What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of GRID Encore. I'm Ben Schneider, joined as always by Brandon Crossland. Brandon, how are you doing? Once again, we absorbed the NASCAR Cup Series recap after a Monday morning finish to this weekend's race in Michigan.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a full year without a few more rain delays, would it? So going into Monday means we had a Motor Monday, and we normally have that here, but this time we get a Cup race to go with it. So we'll talk about that with you amongst a plethora of other things to discuss after this Michigan weekend.
Yeah, Michigan Motor Monday. You can keep the alliteration going even further.
Motor City, Michigan Motor Monday. Yeah,
there you go.
But in Brooklyn, so.
Yeah, well, that's true. All right, we'll get into it here in just a moment. But first, as always, want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Thank you so much for your continued support of this motorsports media outlet here at GRID Network, and it means the world to us. This upcoming weekend, more than ever, Joe Samniego is going to be back along with Jackson Lambros at Portland International Raceway for the IndyCar race weekend. So if you want to see more of that going forward and make it a more common occurrence here on GRID Network for our team members to get out to the track on site, expanding our coverage for you, the viewers. If you like what you see tonight, why not consider joining them on Patreon? Or if you'd rather make a one-time investment in us instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below. Or if you're watching us live on YouTube, we now have a super chat feature enabled as well. And want to say hi as well to Amber in the chat, one of our regulars. Motor Monday Cup appear every time we had a rain delay. I guess, Brandon, we'll have to keep that out here. I mean, you show that Cup pretty much every Monday, regardless.
Yeah, it's there every Monday. Yeah, it's been a thing ever since it's been in my possession. So yeah, it's a standard now.
Yeah, it's a Motor Monday regardless, right?
Now there are different liquids in it every time. This time it is espresso, so that varies. Sometimes it can just be milk. Yeah, I'm one of those people that just drinks milk, so I'll put that out there.
I just drink it straight from the bottle. We're all good.
Yeah, wait. You crack that out for special occasions only, right?
Well, we'll save it for later in the show here because I certainly have some thoughts on the current state of one of the series we cover. I know, Brandon, you've got some thoughts as well, and we'll get into that later on here in the show. Obviously, we want to start with the Cup race since that happened today, and that's the top series here. And Amber is with you there, Brandon, and milk the drink of the Indy 500 champ, so you can't go wrong with that. And Adam in the chat as well. Pretty cool that Tyler Reddick dedicated the win to a legend, Scott Bloomquist, who passed away this past weekend. Yes, and we, of course, at GRID Network here also extend our thoughts, prayers, and condolences to the family of Scott Bloomquist, a dirt racing legend. And Brandon, I got to tell you, man, it is eerie, thinking of how many legends of the sport that we've lost, whether it's plane crashes or helicopter crashes, just in aviation-related accidents. And I guess sometimes that's the danger that you run when you have your own private plane or helicopter or whatever the case may be, traveling to all these races all across the country, but gone far too soon. Scott Bloomquist, one of the legends dirt track scene.
Yeah, it's tragic news there from the weekend, but I mean at the same time, as we've seen in past instances, the aviation and racing, they seem to just go hand in hand with the amount of travel and also just the personal enjoyment of some of those drivers and teams. They enjoy aviation, whether it be through planes or helicopters, what have you. But yeah, a lot of, some close calls too as well over the years. So we're definitely blessed for some of the what could have been. I remember 2019 and Dale Earnhardt Jr. In East Tennessee. Heart dropped for a while there.
I don't even want to think about if that one had gone worse than it did. That would have been. It was scary enough as it is, and thank goodness everybody on that plane was okay. But
not taking away from this tragedy at all, but I think we do forget sometimes what we've been saved from. Sometimes.
Yeah. And I can't. Just over 30 years ago, losing Alan Kawicki and Davey Allison really back to back, just less than a year after their epic championship battle in '92. It's unfortunately been far too frequent of an occurrence. Just keep going with Ted Christopher and Mike Stefanik several years back as well. I'm sure there's a couple that I'm not thinking of at this moment, but it's an unfortunate reality. And like we said, great to see Tyler Reddick, honor him with his win today. And I was actually just the night before he passed, I was going back and I rewatched the Eldora finish from 2013 where Austin Dillon beat out Kyle Larson and Ryan Newman, and reminded that that was Scott's lone truck series start that he made for Kyle Busch at the inaugural Dirt Derby at Eldora. I guess it was the Mud Summer Classic at the time, and I think Major League Baseball, there was a little bit of a dispute as to whether or not that was too close to their trademark Midsummer Classic phrase, so it became a Dirt Derby after that. But regardless, just an absolute legend in the dirt racing scene, like I mentioned, and gone far too soon at the age of 60. So remembering Scott Bloomquist on this race weekend here as well. And congratulations again to Tyler Reddick, and we'll get into his win here in just a moment. First, a few more chat comments to catch up on here. Good to see a day in a life. Another one of our regulars here in chat. I love the new set and design. Thank you so much. Yeah, a little bit of a rebrand here at Grid. Not quite as big of a rebrand as we had earlier this year with the show name and everything and the music and that theme there. But the entire group going under logo change and trying to make things a little bit more uniform here at the Grid Network. So glad to see what you like that. And Adam says, I can still remember when Davey Allison and Alan Kwiecki died, both from aviation accidents. Yeah, there you go. And our own Joe Samaniego, good to see you, Joe, as well. Yeah, 93 was a sad year. I still remember where I was when the news broke on both tragedies. I wasn't around at the time, born in 99, so I was a few years before I was old enough to get invested in the sport, obviously, but just from the stories that others have told here, and I don't even want to imagine what those few months in 93 were like. So certainly something that we sometimes take for granted, I think, and we have to be, I think, more grateful that it hasn't happened more often than it has, and that most of these flights and travels back and forth all across the country to compete in so many races year round, most of the time they get there safely. But unfortunately, we do have these reminders every now and again that, it's not always the case. All right, well, let's move on here and let's talk about Tyler Reddick's victory here today. And Brandon, I got to ask you here, he's been on a bit of a run here. 2311 looked fast this weekend. You had Bubba Wallace make that move to take the lead yesterday. Unfortunately, he got caught up in an accident today that shuffled him further down the order. I think 26th, if I recall correctly. Yeah, there you go. So not a great points day for him, fighting for his spot in the playoffs here. But as for his teammate Tyler Reddick, multiple-time winner this year, seems to have momentum with that organization right now. Do you view him as a strong championship contender, or at least a contender to make it to the championship four and have a shot at it coming time for Phoenix at the end of the year?
Yeah, it's a pretty safe bet to say Tyler Reddick is a championship contender, and you could say that after his first win also this year. But yeah, definitely after picking up the win here at Michigan, picking up a lot of positive momentum. Summer is it can be kind of a deceptive time because it's kind of like that last, to me, like that last stage of the season where things can be different when we head into the fall. So I mean, there's that side of the token too, I guess, where you've got your post Daytona 500 momentum shift, you got your summer swing, and then you got your press to the championship. So this may just be either this is the tail end of a positive trend for 2311, or maybe this is just the beginning of it. So that'll be yet to be seen. But yeah, definitely Tyler Reddick picking up the win and being able to hold off William Byron at the end. It was tough to see some of this race, of course, on the clock working at the time, but got the laptop up above me, and of course it's a part of the job because MRN is we're an affiliate of the Motor Racing Network, so able to have that blasting through the building anyway. So I mean, kind of able to keep in tabs with it. But yeah, able to see that finish and see Tyler Reddick hold on. I really thought Byron was going to be able to pull off a move, just never was able to. It's just a really fast piece there for the 45.
Yeah, well, I see Amber's comment here in chat. We'll get to that in just a moment. I know Matthew Owens and I were certainly going back and forth here about the start times, but just to follow up on Reddick, obviously a tough day for Kyle Larson, finishing 34th, but he falls from first to fourth in the standings as well. Reddick actually the points leader straight up. Obviously,
That's
the playoff
important.
grid and the reset that are coming up are going to reshape that entire landscape here. Bubba Wallace actually 14th in straight up points as well. So again, straight up points, he would be in the top 16, but there have been a couple of winners, Joey Logano and Daniel Suarez in particular, right below him in 15th and 16th, that have wins and therefore leapfrog him with the win and you're in format that we have here, as well as Austin Cindric down in 19th. Austin Dillon, a a so-so run here today, 17th, I guess, average based on where RCR has been this year. And of course, would be in the playoffs if not for the penalties handed down on Wednesday. And we'll see anxious times over at RCR as that appeal is going to be going through this week. So we'll see if they get that overturned or not. It's going to cause a firestorm either way, I think, if they, especially if they do end up getting that overturned. But we'll wait and see. And if news breaks before 5:30 Eastern on Grid tonight this week, I'm sure they'll be all over that as well. But looking at Reddick right now, his last 6 finishes are 3rd at Nashville, 2nd at Chicago, 6th at Pocono, 2nd at Indianapolis, 3rd at Richmond, which I still think should have been a 2nd place finish, and then this win here at Michigan. So that team, there's always a danger, always a thought process. Maybe you're starting to peak a little bit too early, but hard to complain too much if you're Tyler Reddick right now at 23:11.
Yeah, definitely. There's no. I mean, there is a bad time to. There is a possibility of peaking early, so do have to keep check. And as we said as a trumpet section, don't get cocky.
Yeah,
it's an easy thing to do, especially when you're a race car driver. Some that I mean, they have to be very cocky to be in that position.
Well, in a day in the life says right now, speaking of 23:11, if Bubba Wallace fails to get in the playoffs and Reddick wins the regular season championship, what does that do to Wallace's status? I assume you're talking about his status within 23:11 as one of their drivers. If that's the case, I don't know. I don't see 23:11 moving on from Bubba Wallace. He was their first ever driver, and I think has a very strong relationship with Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. So I don't know that missing the playoffs this year after making them last year. It's been kind of funny last few years of his career for Bubba Wallace. Either he misses the playoffs and then wins a race in the playoffs like he did at Talladega in 21 and Kansas in 22, or he makes the playoffs on points but doesn't win in 2023 and has a couple more opportunities to do that here in 2024 to get that win where he could point his way in to the playoffs as well. We'll see how the next couple of races go for him, but I don't know that he's necessarily on the hot seat at 23:11. If he does miss the playoffs, he's going to be one of the first couple of drivers out. And while that's certainly not ideal, I don't think that that's cause for concern that he's going to lose his ride or anything.
Yeah, but I mean, I know Reddick is not going to miss the playoffs now, but both of them could miss the playoffs. I don't think either Tyler Reddick nor Bubba Wallace are even the least bit concerned about job security going to the end of this year.
Yeah, I think if anything, we're getting some rumors that maybe 23:11 might be looking at purchasing a 3rd charter in the not too distant future.
Right. Yeah.
Where those talks go here. Some more rumors related to some Xfinity Series drivers. Who knows what's going to happen? It's I think far too early to speculate too much here. A lot of dominoes still to fall. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be too worried about job security of all things if I'm either of those drivers right now. Certainly not Reddick because he's on pace to potentially win a regular season championship here. So we'll see. Well, let's follow up on Amber's comment here. Can NASCAR start Michigan earlier? Yes, I think, I think Kyle Larson tweeted this weekend as well. I missed the 1 p.m. start times from my rookie year. So, Brandon, I don't know what thoughts you have here aside from the infamous noon comments that David Land was bringing back this weekend as well. I'd like to at least get 1 p.m., especially at a track that doesn't have lights for a number of reasons, as Bob Pockris so reliably pointed out this weekend. But how do you feel about the start times here? And then to follow up on that, how do you feel about 11 a.m. on Monday? Do you think that with a forecast that didn't include a lot of rain today, do you think it would have been safe for NASCAR to start a little bit later to give people an opportunity to get out of work or school? Or were you happy to just get it over with as quickly as possible today?
There's so many knots in this kind of thing to unravel, Ben. So I'll try to see what I'm thinking about here. Starting with the noon, I am full team noon. Like I completely like you'll find me with a noon shirt. I don't know if he makes that, but if that's out there, I would wear that. Especially to somewhere like Indianapolis. That's a perfect place. Just icing on the cake to start at noon. But at the same time, there are TV partners. There are people in boardrooms that control these things that their job is to look at what time people's eyeballs are on the TV, and they make these decisions separate from I would believe separate from the rest of the organizations, and they have an idea of when when they're going to have the most eyeballs on the race, and so that is, I mean, that's why they are later, because they want to get into the prime time area. Now, I mean, in the summertime, a lot of the prime time is reruns anyway, but that's another story. But I see why they do that. I don't always agree with it, but I can understand why they do it. Kind of the same way you understand the playoffs. You know, you don't agree with it, but you understand the appeal. In some
Yeah.
ways. Yeah.
I understand. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I understand the appeal. I don't understand the
Right.
system. But
I understand. Yeah. So for anyway, to not
yeah,
get off the subject, for TV time, I understand why they do that, and sometimes I think it works. I mean, the sport is growing. Certainly, there's a lot of sellouts, and there's lots of reasons to believe that it's steadily growing. And I don't think um, I think having it in these right key times is got to play a part in that. Okay, but also going to the next day now. Um, Talking about why can't we have it later on Monday to get people, time to get off of work and get home. Like you and I believe we were both at work when this was going on, and even Jeff Striegel said on the MRN call, you're probably listening to us at the office with your earbud in, or wherever you're at to hear the broadcast today. Um, that and that situation on Monday, I'm thinking about the teams. What do they think about this? They need to get back to Mooresville as soon as they can. And so stretching this out for any length of time on Monday is not beneficial to the teams. And I think that's the main reason they go as early as humanly possible, get out of Brooklyn as humanly possible, and get rolling into their next week protocol, because like they're already behind. They have to get into Daytona mode. So I on both days, I understand, I get why they do what they do, but I also understand why we want to have them at the preferred times. It's just a balance of needs that are pulling two different ways on both of these days, and I understand why.
yeah, and I mean, I guess the argument coming up here in a couple of weeks is that if you start the race at 1 p.m., there's a bunch of NFL games to start at 1 p.m., and you're never going to win that battle. But I mean, if you start at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., I feel like it's even more of a losing battle, because any potential viewers that would have to choose, maybe they start watching the NFL game at 1 o'clock and then they just never switch over, or they get invested in the game and they never switch away to go over to the race. So I feel like that's a losing battle no matter how you look at it. But yeah, I mean, I understand that if you bleed into the prime time window, that maybe it provides a little bit of a ratings boost, especially for Daytona, because I remember 2020 getting postponed over to Monday. I think that race didn't resume until 4 or 4:30, on a Monday night, which I guess for your biggest race of the year, trying to keep the ratings from becoming as much of a losing battle as you can. I guess I understand it from that perspective. But again, I mean, any time of year you're racing in Florida, I would prefer that you leave yourself as much of a window to prevent having to come back on a Tuesday or another situation like that. But I think, Brandon, your point is very you've got a very strong point there about the teams having to get back to their base in North Carolina or wherever the next race is. You try to shorten that turnaround as much as possible, make sure that they can get out of there at a reasonable hour on Monday and not lose more time than they're already forced to lose because of the weather. Matthew and I were talking yesterday, and he said he feels like 3:30 at the earliest on Monday should be a start to give people an opportunity to get out of work or get out of school, whatever the case may be. But I just feel like, there's enough people that work, the afternoon shift or the night shift, that I don't know if it makes enough of a difference to justify pushing these team schedules back even more. Or, it wasn't too much of an issue today, but, what if there have been more afternoon pop-up showers that come into effect? And, if you had the morning, you could have gotten more laps in the morning or the early afternoon. You're just setting yourself up for more potential problems right there. So those are kind of my thoughts on that here. Again, I'm with you. I understand the appeal that late start times have from TV networks, but I feel like at some point NASCAR just kind of has to put their foot down and say, we're a sanctioning body. Here's where we're having our races. Here's when we're starting our races. If you don't want to broadcast them, we'll go find somebody else who can.
Well, okay, I've got one thing. Another element to this could also be, what about the fans who they've got a hotel reservation for that Sunday night, and then you tell them,
Sure.
"Oh,
Yeah.
well, sorry, we have to wait till the afternoon." Well, sorry, I live in Iowa, man. We drove, you know, X number of miles to get here just to watch this or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just imagine the fan implications too of their commute and hotel
Good point.
reservations. They don't make them stay around all day long just to, you see where I'm going with that. And
Yeah.
then also, um, I don't know what the times look like for next year, but when we have races on Amazon Prime, this might be forgive me, a prime time to experiment with start times because you're not bound to cable with
Yeah.
Amazon Prime. You could very well. I mean, you're still dealing with what time window are people watching things, but I mean, with Amazon Prime, that might be a way of, hey, your people who want to watch it, they know where it is, they know when it's going to be on. Try something a little more traditional and see if it sticks because there's no precedent really for NASCAR on Prime yet
Yeah. Well,
until you make
that
it.
and that's certainly true. And that's another good point. But then again, I think I don't know how many Law and Order fans were necessarily devastated that their 11 a.m. Reruns of a random episode from season 6 were preempted for a NASCAR race. I don't know that NBC's got to worry too much about that. Apologies to all the diehard Law and Order fans out there, but
Boom, boom.
yeah, that's got to be streaming somewhere anyway, right? You can pull up. I would
Peacock. You can
imagine.
watch
Yeah,
all of them on Peacock right
I would.
now.
Yeah. All right. Well, and Amber follows up here. Is it worth keeping Michigan anymore? I think absolutely, and I think especially with
Yeah.
what happened to Fontana. The reconfiguration or whatever's going on there. This is the only 2-mile D-shaped oval that we have left. Texas World is obviously long gone. Fontana, at least in its current form or most recent form, is gone now as well. I think you have to keep Michigan because if we lose Michigan, then this where else do we have a track type like this? And I'm not a fan of the package that the Xfinity Series used. I'd love seeing those cars go 210, 215 into the corners. I think that it's a kind of spectacle that we only get here at this track. We're not going to get it at Fontana anymore going forward. So yeah, absolutely. I think a Day in My Life is absolutely right here. That's probably a top 5 track, I would say, at this point in NASCAR's history that is a non-negotiable here, at least outside the crown jewels, which should be obvious. But of the tracks that you could maybe say, we rotate in and out, or should they have 1 date or 2 dates? Michigan's got to be there, no question.
Absolutely. It is an endangered species. Michigan is a dinosaur now, and we have to protect it at all
Yeah,
costs because I mean there's not in any time soon is someone going to go out and build a brand new racetrack that is that size and shape.
yeah, and
Michigan
Joe,
deserves NASCAR and IndyCar date. Yes, they do.
yes, Joe's right on point here as well. I don't know. I mean, again, that was '07 was really the first year I followed racing full time. So I don't know if the accident with Franchitti going up into the air, if that played any role in that being the IRL's last trip to Michigan. But I would love to see an IndyCar race there again. I mean, they went back to Fontana from 2012 to 2015. I know the 15 race was controversial for the pack racing nature that it became, but I think if you get the right package, why can't we put IndyCar back at Michigan? I think that would be a great addition to the IndyCar calendar, no question.
Yeah, they belong there really.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on here. Let's talk a little bit about race control and what is a caution, what isn't a caution. I know this has been a hot topic over the last couple of weekends. We obviously had the finish to Indianapolis with Ryan Preece getting stalled on the backstretch, and NASCAR waiting to see if he could get it refired. He could not. The caution came out on the white flag lap. We didn't get a restart. A lot of fans were upset about that. And then even last weekend, obviously, I think the biggest controversy was what Austin Dillon did to win that race. But I still stand by my opinion. I don't believe Denny Hamlin finished second that night. I think Tyler Reddick finished second. Obviously, NASCAR scoring disagreed. They froze the field because the caution came out at the moment it did. They thought Denny Hamlin maintained reasonable enough pace. I think he didn't, but that's just my opinion. But it's been a talking point the last couple of weekends here that we've had a NASCAR Cup Series race, and it came back up again today. Late in the race, Truex brushed the wall. NASCAR seemed very trigger happy with that caution button, Brandon. So I'll just let you give your thoughts on this situation here. Do you think that warranted a caution, or do you think we should have gotten a natural race to the finish there in the closing laps?
Yeah, the standard of what counts as a caution and what doesn't is kind of tricky. Really, I would prefer it to be whenever, not if the car is still capable of making it down to the apron or getting to pit road, then don't put the yellow out. But there's some times where the officials can see things that maybe we can't see, um, on the other side of the track, that you know they had the better judgment call there, and sometimes I just have to trust their judgment and find out later that they were correct by seeing the replay and seeing exactly what they saw. But then, yeah, you're right. There are been many times here, especially in just the recent past, where it's just like just a simple spin. We don't even know the outcome of it yet. We don't know how it's going to end up, but they don't want to figure that out yet. Just yellow, and then we'll figure it out. And then we go back and think, did that really need? I know we're swaying on the side of safety, which is a heightened concern, as it should be, but um, at some points it ends up affecting the nature that is the just the ebb and flow of the competition.
Yeah, it reminds me kind of the phantom debris cautions that took off in the late 2000s, early 2010s, where NASCAR would throw a caution. They'd say it was for debris, but the TV networks would never show where that debris was.
Those are prehistoric stages, Ben.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that, just without the points being awarded. But, but then, I mean, I remember Kurt Busch. I guess it was I think it was Fontana 2015, right, where he was leading with just a few laps to go, and it was like only his second race back, I think, from his suspension for that matter that is not worth getting into right here, right now. But, there are some people that think that NASCAR didn't want Kurt Busch to win that day, and so they did what they could to throw a caution to try to mix things up. I don't necessarily buy into that conspiracy theory here, but I think it's the one that, maybe has gained the most traction among this subject here, at least. So I think that in this day and age now, where we have cameras all around the track, there's really no excuse to not have an eye on the debris if that's the reason for the caution. Of course, there are legitimate debris cautions that come out as well. If you have a metal part in the middle of the racing line, even if there's no accident on the track, there's going to be an accident if you don't throw the caution to get that cleaned up. But in this case here, I don't know. I've got to admit, I was with you, Brandon. I was at work during the race, so I was listening to the parts that I could, and didn't get to see everything in full detail. But judging from the fan reaction, it didn't look like there was a ton of debris from whatever was left from Truex brushing the wall there. It reminds me of Stenhouse getting into the wall at the All-Star race a couple of years ago, right before Ryan Blaney was supposed to take the checkered flag, and he put his window net down thinking the race was over, but the caution had come on within, I think, a second of him about to cross that line. And, obviously a major source of controversy there. So I don't know. All I ask, and I understand that it's impossible in this series and in this sport, apparently, but I just ask for a little consistency. I don't understand why it's so hard, and I don't understand why the only thing we're capable of being consistent on is inconsistency, but it appears, based on what's happened in the last few weeks, that mentality filters its way into when we throw cautions and when we let the race continue to remain green as well.
Yeah, I don't want to agree. I don't want to agree with you, but
yeah. So I don't know. We'll leave it there. I'm sure there's going to be no shortage of discussion this week as to that incident and other incidents like it, and people bringing up incidents from the past that either did or didn't bring out the yellow. But we'll leave it there. But let's continue talking about Truex here. He's right on that. Well, not right on the cut line, but I think he's probably the best positioned of anybody that doesn't have a win yet this year to get into the playoffs here in his farewell full-time season here in the Cup Series. How should Truex approach Daytona coming up this weekend, Brandon? Then on top of that, obviously a little bit of a different dynamic this year with this not being the cutoff race. Darlington's going to be the cutoff race here in 2 weekends to get into the playoffs. Do you think, first of all, do you think Truex in particular will maybe be a little bit more cautious, or do you think the entire field will be more cautious? Will we see a little bit less chaos knowing that there will still be one more opportunity following Daytona to get into the playoffs here and win a race?
Yeah, I love the decision to remove Daytona for being such a pivotal race, and I think you are too. Switching that to let Darlington, let the lady in black handle that burden, because she's able to wipe people out on her own. So let Daytona be the preamble to the danger zone. So Daytona, that's gonna help that race. I think it's still gonna be a crash fest at the end, but I think it's gonna. I at least predict that it'll soften some of the blow that maybe we would have gotten if it were still a cutoff race at the end of the regular season. Truex has got to be very. I think the whole field's going to be a little more lax, a little more cautious. But Truex, yeah, he's got to be really careful, and just I wouldn't be surprised with his history at Daytona, just hanging in the back and waiting for it.
Yeah, I'm not too hopeful that we're not going to see like a big one or anything. I still think we're going to see some chaos, but I'm hopeful that it doesn't turn into a multiple overtime sort of deal. Although maybe it will, because for some drivers, this is probably still their last opportunity, or last best opportunity, at least, to get in to that playoff field here. But I am glad, at least it wasn't the full season finale. It's not like, the date that Phoenix has is occupied by Talladega or Daytona, and that's where we crown our actual champion. It's only been where we crown our regular season champion. I feel like the terms there were at least somewhat acceptable, because at least you can make the argument, well, if you have bad luck here, you had 25 races to offset that prior to the 26th year of Daytona. I can at least understand that argument a little bit more. But I am glad that it's not the cutoff race, and that Darlington has that spot this year. We'll see if that continues into the future. We thought we got the schedule this weekend. It appears, I think it was the NASCAR Latino account that leaked something that maybe wasn't quite finalized just yet. So we'll keep our eye on that as well. But yeah, I'm hopeful that with it being the penultimate race rather than the final race, that maybe we will see a little bit less chaos, and we'll see. Maybe Martin Truex Jr. does take it a little bit more conservative and just tries to solidify his position rather than trying to make a move for the win when he's already in a pretty good spot, and then losing a bunch of points after that, and maybe having to go into Darlington still with that question mark hanging over his head.
One thing's for certain. I'm sure he's very glad that in his last year full time, he doesn't have to take the regular season championship winning pose with the award at the end at Daytona. It doesn't have to,
Yeah.
That seems to be the theme for every regular season champion so far, does it not?
Well, it's a shame he doesn't have Cole Purnes as crew chief anymore, because I think Purnes' reaction there was even better than Truex's was here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I should just keep that photo saved in our files here this time of year and pull it up whenever it comes up.
Yeah, you just drop that bad boy on the screen anytime we have a biff with the playoff system.
No, I mean, it really was. I mean, it's like that was the first time ever that they handed it out, right? It was 2017. It was like, okay, these guys they're after the prize that they get 10 races from now, which of course they ultimately got anyway. But it's like Bill Belichick when they're doing the AFC championship all those years. It's like we win this almost every year. We want the next one that comes in 2 weeks.
If that picture had a sound, it would be that spam mail from the late 90s that goes, "Congratulations, you won."
Yeah,
it's like that little like yellow smiley face. Yeah,
that'd
be it.
All right, so we'll keep an eye on Truex, and 2 more races for these Cup Series drivers. We'll see what kind of moves they make next weekend at Daytona, or if they play a little more conservative, knowing that they have one final opportunity after that at Darlington. In the meantime, we move on now to one of our regular series here on this show, the Xfinity Series, also in action in Michigan. Justin Allgaier picking up another win. Sheldon Creed, once again, I mean, what does this guy have to do to get a race win? We'll talk about him here in just a moment. Another second-place finish for Joe Gibbs Racing driver. But for a junior motorsports driver, Justin Allgaier, Brandon, it's his 25th win. He passes his boss, Dale Earnhardt Jr., with 24 on the all-time Xfinity Series wins list. How significant is that for Justin Allgaier? And do you think maybe it was a little bit of an interesting competition meeting? I guess maybe it didn't happen today with the delay and everything, but what's going on in junior motorsports right now? Do you think Junior might be a little bit more fired up when he gets in that car later this year to get back equal with his veteran driver?
Man, I don't have to tell you how significant that is. Look at that. Justin Allgaier beat Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the all-time win list for the Xfinity Series. We kind of saw it coming, but to say that it's actually done, yeah, Junior's going to be fired up here whenever he gets back in the car. That's big for Justin Allgaier. Another notch in his pocket for whenever he decides it's over. But he's enjoying his time in the Xfinity Series, still able to win races, and his first time to win at Michigan in his career, also a big milestone for him. But man, he'd love to take that championship though. It's just still so elusive for the 7, and
Yeah.
it seemed like it could be such a reality last year just to slip away. And he's a contender every single year. I mean, it's no issue. It's just getting there and getting it done.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, that's kind of been his white whale in his Xfinity Series career. The one thing that he is continuing to chase. What is this here? I think I'm just doing some quick math in my head. I think 6 of the last 8 years. So since the playoffs began in this series, 2016, 6 of those 8 seasons, he's been in the championship 4, just has yet to finish in first in that Homestead or Phoenix race. And I guess he doesn't necessarily need to, just have to beat the other 3 championship contenders, but still looking for that elusive championship here. But in terms of race victories, Brandon, let me just go up this list here and tell you some of the names that are ahead of Justin Allgaier. Jeff Burton, Matt Kenseth, 27 and 29, respectively. Joey Logano with 30. Jack Ingram, Hall of Famer, one of the best Xfinity Series regulars. I mean, you want to go back to the beginning days of the Busch Grand National Series. Jack Ingram's your guy with 31. Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski, 38 and 39. Kevin Harvick, 47. Mark Martin, 49. And of course, we all know Kyle Busch, I think, is going to have that record just as long as Richard Petty has the Cup Series record with 102. But you look at some of those names, all those names really above Allgaier, those are all, if not Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers, or at least drivers that are in consideration here. You can maybe say Jeff Burton's a little bit more borderline, but he's been on the ballot the last couple of years and certainly deserving at least of consideration. So, and Dale Jr., who we just passed, is a Hall of Famer as well. So I think, again, I've made this point on this show before. I think if Allgaier gets a championship, maybe even 1 championship, certainly if he gets 2, we'll see how much longer he keeps going here. But I think you have to put him in the Hall of Fame conversation just off of his Xfinity career alone and what he's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, just listen to all those names you just said there. I mean, he's not a Cup. He did not go on to be a Cup regular for any length of for any real length of time competitively, like all those
Scott
others.
Motorsports, Brandon.
Yeah,
I mean,
and so
what can you expect him to do with all due respect to the people that are working on those cars? Just
yeah, and he wouldn't want to be there on Sunday anyway. But besides Jack Ingram, he's up there with a bunch of guys that have gone on to win championships in the Cup Series. I mean, just tell me again how he is not a talented driver worthy of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and again, I think that the championship is what's missing here. But just what is so Allgaier's 38. He turned 38 earlier this year. You see, I mean, AJ Allmendinger, we know, that news broke this weekend as well. He's going back up to the Cup Series. They've got him kind of on the seesaw over there at Colic Racing with what series he's competing in. But you look at how competitive he's been in this series into his early 40s. I think Allgaier could keep doing this a minimum 5 more seasons. And just do some quick math here. If he wins 2 races a year for the next 5 years, which I think, with how strong he is and how strong Junior Motorsports is, that might even be a little bit of a conservative estimate. That would put him at 35 wins. And if you give him a championship to go along with that, you can make the argument he's a top 5 Xfinity Series driver of all time, just based on those stats alone. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure he had a lot of fun filling in for Kyle Larson this year at the Coca-Cola 600. And it's a shame that the race didn't get restarted. I would have loved to have seen. I mean, I'm sure Allgaier would have had mixed feelings about picking up a Cup Series win under those circumstances. The Milwaukee 2007 flashbacks coming back, even though that was a totally different situation there. But
for what it's worth, he kicked butt too.
He did, yeah.
I mean,
and I think what did he end up? I think 13th. 13th in the 600 this year, and obviously gets would have gotten credit for the result regardless if Larson had gotten in the car. But that was all him. Larson never got a chance. He got to the track right as the the caution came out for the rain, and we never got the race restarted, unfortunately. But
in hindsight, I'm kind of glad it ended up that way, just a little bit, just for Justin Allgaier's sake.
For Allgaier to come in there. Let's see here. So
that was his 600.
That was his, yes, and it was his third start in a next gen car. He did 22 Bristol Dirt with Spire, and then 22 Talladega with Beard Motorsports. That's it. That was the extent of his next gen experience. And so for Allgaier to get into a Hendrick Motorsports car and come away finishing 13th in that race, expecting that he was just going to be on standby should Larson get delayed, and unfortunately he was, to jump in there, do the full race at least as much as we got in, come away 13th. Again, just another example of the talent that he is. And at this point in his career, don't even know that he would want to be racing on Sundays, even if an opportunity like that opened up. But it's certainly not for lack of talent, and he's shown that in Xfinity here, just on his junior motorsports career alone.
At this point in his career, definitely a personal choice. Loves the time with his family, and also I think if he were to get rid of the facial hair, all the talent would be gone. It all lies in the beard, man.
Well, I don't know. He had a couple of strong runs in the Penske car back in the day, I think, before he had the beard. I don't know. We'll leave that for the viewers to decide here, I guess. But let's move on here. Sheldon Creed, like I mentioned, Brandon, I believe the 11th time that he's finished second in this series. Now, the last guy that racked up a bunch of seconds before his first win was Daniel Hemrick, driving the same car that Creed is driving right now. We all know he went on to take a very dramatic championship victory, still his lone race victory in NASCAR's top three divisions. Daniel Hemrick winning that race at Phoenix in 21. I don't know. Is this just Sheldon Creed continuing to have his patience tested? Is he going to shock the world like Daniel Hemrick did, or what is it going to take for him to finally get that car in victory lane?
I don't know. It's going to take everything lining up in his favor. He's doing. I mean, really, he's kind of doing everything right. It's not always by, oh, you messed up there, or, oh, bad pit stop there, it's the team's fault, or he's putting himself in position. It's just not happening for him. He's got to be clear.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, just again, looking at
10 top fives, 13 top tens is what I was getting at. Yeah,
8 of those, 6 of those top fives coming in the last 8 races here. 3 of those runner-up finishes as well, with Sonoma and New Hampshire being part of that stretch. So again, you would think, and 2 poles in the last 3 weekends as well. Like if you continue running like this, finishing like this, it's inevitable. It has to happen by accident at some point, right? Like somebody's got to blow a tire or run out of fuel while you're running. Like if you continue to put yourself in this position enough, you would think it's inevitable that at some point you're going to break through. But I'll say this much as well. Dale Jarrett was on the broadcast, of course, for NBC this weekend as well, and was talking about Hemrick and the number of runner-ups that he had to go through. Dale Jarrett was very similar. I think Jarrett shared that record with Hemrick and Creed. Obviously, Creed broke it this weekend, but Dale Jarrett went on to have a pretty good Hall of Fame career himself. So maybe not all, the end of the world for Sheldon Creed if he has to go through these trials and tribulations here before he finally breaks through to victory lane. But, again, it hasn't been for, lack of equipment or lack of trying or lack of performance, even with, how many runner-up finishes he's had. It's a matter of, being able to put yourself in the position to come home and seal the deal. And Creed has been in that position several times, just unfortunately just has not been able to get to the finish line first. And the amount of ways that he's lost these races, photo finishes, on a super speedway, or, trying that Ross Chastain style video game move at Darlington as well. I mean, it's just every possible way you can imagine just has not happened for Creed yet. But again, like I said, you keep running like this, you would think at some point it's inevitable.
And not to mention the amount of times he's had to keep switching teams, and he's going to do it again in 2025 with the Haas factory team.
Yeah,
and Sam Mayer are going to be the duo over there, and they're going to keep dropping the 98 and keeping the 41. I remember.
I was a little disappointed to see that, actually, because the 98 can trace its roots and legacy back to the Biaggi car, but that Stuart Haas bought out all those years ago. So a little bit of a shame to see that 98 go. But I guess I understand if it's the full Haas brand and Haas factory team next year, it probably makes more sense to bring the
41 is their legacy.
Yeah, at least and that was Gene Haas's car at Stuart Haas in the Cup Series when that one was introduced. So. But yeah, we'll see. Interesting comments this weekend. I'm glad you brought that up, Brandon, as well, from Joe Custer, saying he expects the team to dominate next year, and if they don't, you can answer to him, and he'll take responsibility for it. So they certainly have high ambitions over there, which I suppose isn't a bad thing. But we'll just have to wait and see when they get out on the track in 25.
Well, I'm certainly glad for Ford. Although they're not really gaining anything, they're just replacing what they're losing.
Yeah.
But still, it's still keeping. I want to see parity in all. I've said this a lot before. I love seeing the parity of all three top series be as equal as it can be, and also as hopefully as equally powered as it can be. You can have a bunch of blue ovals and they all suck, but you want to have the power balance too. So I like seeing the parity where each manufacturer has a very legitimate shot each weekend and good numbers too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's move on here. Let's talk about one final issue that came up both in the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series race. You see Kyle Sieg down there in 28th, and you can go back to the question of the caution again, I guess, coming out. I think some fans felt like they were robbed of the green flag finish in the Xfinity race, but I think a car being upside down probably, that warrants caution immediately. Yeah, I don't think
there's not to argue.
I think that's a losing argument if you're going to say, oh, he was all the way off the racing line in the infield. Like, no, if a car is upside down, I think you have to throw the caution. I don't think you're going to be winning very many arguments if you're on the other side of that. But
race back to the line.
The race. Yeah, well, that conversation's come up in recent weeks as well. But again, I think that a flip should be a fairly obvious situation there. But you had that happen for Kyle Sieg on Saturday, and then you had this for Corey LaJoie again today as well, finishing 32nd. Obviously, Xfinity and Cup, very different cars these days, more than ever with the next gen era. But Brandon, how much of a concern from a safety aspect was this here for you this weekend? Obviously, even with the Xfinity package that they were running, Kyle Sieg was still able to get up in the air and go over a couple times, and then Corey LaJoie as well in the Cup race today. What do you think happened here at Michigan?
My eyes went wide open. I was sending an email or something like that, and I look up and I see Corey LaJoie is upside down. So kind of missed that, but you're right, Adam. Both of them were pretty weird. From what I remember, Kyle Sieg's was more of a crossover in front of him gone wrong, and just ended up on the bad side of it. But yeah, that's concerning, especially when it happens 2 days in a row at the same. Well, not 2 days in the same weekend, two different series. Both on the back stretch. It's always going to bring a concern, especially when they flip, and that's going to be a long look in the safety department where they. I think anytime a car flips, I think of Elliott Sadler 2003 Talladega every time, because that's just the image in my mind of going back and looking at a crash and figuring out how you can make the sport safer afterwards, which is what they always intend to do after those incidents happen. I'm just I hope this doesn't do anything negative for Michigan. It's certainly not a part of the track, and I hope they don't change packages or anything like that. Just whatever they change, I hope it doesn't affect the racing product in a negative sense.
Yeah, highly recommend if you haven't yet, go listen to Elliott and Hermie Sadler as well. We're on the Dale Jr. download not so long ago, and those incidents came up. Sadler's own flip at Michigan as well in the Wood Brothers car, and then obviously that Talladega crash as well. They kind of teased that, in a teaser for that episode, and Sadler talking about one of those wrecks and NASCAR having footage that they didn't want released. They wanted Elliott to see it, but I was thinking, are they talking about his Pocono crash that ESPN missed because they were focused on Kurt Busch and that weird sort of deal? But certainly some great insight from that episode. But Brandon, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to wonder, and I think some fans have picked up on this as well. Is it because the underbody of the next gen car is so smooth? Maybe is that allowing the air to have an easier time lifting the car up, and is that creating? I mean, we saw it. I think that was 22, right? So that would have been the very first race with this car with Harrison Burton at Daytona. Yeah. So, I imagine that it's been on NASCAR's radar ever since that happened, and certainly through testing and everything. But is that something that you think could be playing a role in at least the LaJoie incident that we saw today?
I mean, I'll preface this with I'm not a physicist, but the cars have never been so flat on their bottom all their since the beginning of the sport. There's always been little different places where the air can go, and now it all just airplane mode. So I mean, yeah, it's not hard to understand why car can go in air, but I mean, there's all sorts of things on top of the car too that they've developed over several decades. That the roof flaps and what have you, and now the on the hood as well. Everything designed to, and the spoiler as well. Everything designed to keep the car planted to the ground at all costs. But the way the universe is set up, there's just some things you can't stop. And there's the problem with trying to make things safer is there's an infinite number of ways that we can and will find to place these cars in different situations. There'll always be a new way to make them flip. I think I don't know if we'll ever keep them from like 100% chance they'll never take off.
Yeah. Well, I think the laws of physics would still find a way. You can never be 100% confident when you get in one of these cars that there's a 0% chance that you're going to take off. If you spin out or get hit just the right way or whatever. But you never like to see cars get upside down. So certainly thankful that Kyle and Corey are both okay here. But yeah, something to keep an eye out for with that diffuser on a next gen car. If that played a role, and I'm sure NASCAR's already taken a look at it or will be this week at R&D to see what happened there and how to try to, if not prevent it in the future, at least mitigate the risk so that it doesn't happen again. Because again, like we talked about earlier in the show, I don't think it's an issue with Michigan. I certainly think that it deserves a place on the calendar, and I hope to see it on the calendar for many years to come. But yeah, at the same time, concerning to have multiple flips this weekend, and certainly want to get to the bottom of that if we can. All right, well, let's move on here. We had 2 ARCA races this weekend, a little bit of a weird doubleheader like we've seen the last couple of years, just the way the scheduling works out with the state fair at Springfield and everything. We had an ARCA race on Friday at Michigan. Connor Zilic won that one. Huge surprise there. And then another huge surprise at Springfield with William Sawalich taking yet another win in the Gibbs 18. That car and the Pinnacle 28 that Connor Zilic drove, they have combined for every win this year, no matter who has been behind the wheel of those cars, aside from the Venturini wins at Daytona and Talladega. And we are now 14 races into the season, and we are still looking for our first victory by a full-time series regular. So, Brandon, I'll just open it up to you as somebody that maybe hasn't followed the ARCA series as closely as you used to in recent years. Is that part of the reason why? Has it gotten too predictable? Is it frustrating seeing a championship battle among drivers that aren't parking in victory lane because it's getting oversaturated by really just 2 cars here? What is your take on the current state of the ARCA Menards Series?
Man, we are way too late in this show to have this kind of open discussion, but I'll keep my thoughts brief. It's the same take that I've had anytime this is brought up. It's disappointing to me the money issue, especially in this in the ARCA level of competition, where the Joe Gibbs Racings of the world can come in with top-notch equipment and top-notch driver. It's like it's almost like these in college football, whenever the number 1 or number 2 ranked team in the nation gets to come and play the FCS team for sport and just make mincemeat out of them. And, they pay, or sorry, that the FCS team pays
Right.
the top ranked team to play them at their home turf. so they can keep funding their program. Um, Only in this case, you don't get any money back for playing against Joe Gibbs. You just get smushed every week, and you try to survive as a normal team uh, that should be at this level instead of those that are at the Cup and Xfinity and sometimes truck level, less of the truck level, more of the Cup and Xfinity that really, besides developmental things, they have no business in the ARCA Menards series, if you want my frank opinion. And I think we would have some better competition, and yes, more parity of winners, which is better than what we have now. If they weren't there, but you can't do that at the same time. It seems you can't
Yeah.
do that to the series because it would lose so much of its you know the money that's being put into it, and it just you can't just bar people from competing. I suppose.
Well, I don't know. If I'm given them a choice between a 19 car field and a 20 car field, but one of those cars is affiliated with a championship winning cup program and is going to lead virtually every lap. I guess they're saying Sawalich led 104 of 105. I thought he led every lap, and I thought they said that on the broadcast. I think they went back and said that Kelikovsky got one of those, maybe on a restart double file, beat Sawalich to the line momentarily. But for all intents and purposes, leading every lap. I'm sorry to Joe Gibbs, but I'd take the 19 every time. I don't know. I mean, I understand, and I think Chesapeake Diecast said this in an opinion video, but he put it out about a year ago, saying that, basically, just to be frank, the current state of the series stinks. Because I mean, it's not.
It's unwatchable. I'm sorry, it's unwatchable.
It's become because
I hate that.
of what's happening in Formula One right now. I think people have caught up to Max Verstappen and Red Bull. We've seen the McLaren drivers, the Mercedes drivers, the Ferrari drivers all win races this year. I think F1 has somehow gotten more unpredictable than the ARCA Menards Series, which is kind of crazy to think about. Let me put this into perspective from Zilich first, and we'll get back to Gibbs here. Connor Zilich was leading on the white flag lap at Watkins Glen last year in his ARCA debut with a broken sway bar, some sort of mechanical issue, got passed by Jesse Love coming out of the final corner. So he's a slight mechanical issue away from being 5 for 5 in his first 5 starts in the National Series for ARCA. He's won 4 of 6 East Series races this year as well. And so I tweeted on Friday that, look, I think, I mean this as a compliment. Connor Zilich, I think, in a lot of ways, is simply too good for ARCA. And then I quote tweeted that yesterday with the results that we got here. And I said, William Sawalich is also too good for ARCA. Now, I don't know, Brandon, to your point, I don't know that you can necessarily do anything for it because it's just Diecast said in that video last year, it's not against the letter of the law for Joe Gibbs Racing to run this car in the ARCA Menards Series, but it's kind of against the spirit of the law for them to take an unlimited Cup Series level budget and put it in these races where, I guess aside from the money that Toyota's pouring into Venturini and I guess that Chevy's pouring into Rev Racing, and not to say that those teams aren't, doing a lot with, the resources that they have and certainly are higher up in terms of their equipment than some of the drivers you see here on the second half of this list. There's certainly levels to this, and Venturini and Rev are at the top of the series among non-Cup affiliated programs, but even they, you can see, are having a hard time competing with Joe Gibbs Racing here because, I mean, again, I was texting a couple of friends back and forth as we were watching the race unfold yesterday. Was there ever any doubt that William Sawalich was going to win this race? And I look at the results here, and we'll get into this here a little bit later on. It's my one shining moment. I see Adam's comment here in the chat room. I mean, imagine the storylines today. If we could be talking about Isabella Robusto, who I have called on this network before, I think potentially the best female prospect in this sport since Shauna Robinson, winning her first race in, I don't know, was this her second dirt race before? I mean, she doesn't have a ton of dirt experience, but then you could follow that up by saying Taylor Reimer finishing right behind her. Imagine if that was a runner-up finish in her only second ARCA start. And Venturini comes away with a 1-2 finish with 2 female drivers. I mean, what a story that would be for the series and for the sport. But we have a Joe Gibbs Racing ARCA car standing in the way of that, and it's William Sawalich's, I think, what is this, his 5th win in his last 6 starts in that car this year. He's winning almost every time he gets behind the wheel, almost leading every lap almost every time he gets behind the wheel. I don't know. Again, I don't. It's not illegal. I don't think there's anything you can necessarily do. I mean, I saw somebody tweet yesterday, park the 18. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I don't love seeing this. It's nothing against the driver behind the wheel. But I get the sentiment. I don't know what you can do. And yet at the same time, I feel like something does have to be done to make this series a little bit more competitive and a little bit more watchable. I don't know if that's a cost cap. I don't know if that's, saying, all right, Gibbs, you can enter a car, but we got to put some sort of handicap on you. Like you can't be running a brand new motor, a brand new chassis every week here, like you do with, your cup program or whatever. I don't know.
My first thought.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, you basically, like, what do you think is going to happen when you have a cup program competing against a bunch of ARCA programs? The cup program 90% of the time is going to win the race pretty much unopposed, or at the very least come away with the top 2 or 3, which is what Sawalich has done every race this year except Dover, which he sat on pole and led the most laps for before he DNF'd with a 17th place finish. So it wasn't because he didn't finish there on pace. He certainly had the pace to win that one as well.
It's the Brewers organization playing in Little League.
Single A.
Single A.
I'm not going to go so far as to say Little League, but yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's the same. It's really, when you think about it, it's from a team perspective. It's like Kyle Busch winning all these Truck Series races. It's okay. You're a Cups. You're coming in from the Cup Series. What do you think is going to happen? I'm not saying that it takes zero skill or that we talked about Kyle's records here on the show before, but if I can be quite honest with you, I think what Kyle does as a driver is still more impressive than what Joe Gibbs Racing as an organization is doing here. And again, no disrespect to Sawalich, because he's just a driver and all this, and I think he's got a bright future. But you put a very good, talented prospect behind the wheel of objectively the best car in the series. I don't know. I just
there's literally nothing stopping you from Richard Pettying the field for the whole year.
And it doesn't create a very compelling product, in my humble opinion. I just don't see how it's sustainable.
The way it's compelling, I mean, if it's compelling for you, the viewer, then all power to you. I'm not trying to take that away from you at all. I mean, if you have your driver in the ARCA Menards Series or even in the East or West, I'm not trying to take that away from you. I'm just, from my opinion, it is really hard to watch when I know who's going to win from pole, lead every lap, and I am with you, Ben. It makes it a little more frustrating when it looks like you're about to get finally break that cycle, and then something silly happens and it brings up an overtime, and right coming to the line for this kind of thing to happen is just, it's upsetting a little bit.
Yeah. So your winners this year in ARCA, to kind of put a bow on this, William Sawalich has 6, Connor Zolich has 4. That's 10 of your 14. Connor Mosack also got a win in that Pinnacle 28 car at Kansas. Tanner Gray also got a win in that Gibbs 18 at Charlotte. So that's 12 of your 14 races. The only 2 others are the Talladega races, or the Super Speedway races, rather, Daytona and Talladega. Gus Dean winning for Venturini at Daytona, Jake Finch at Talladega for Venturini, but they're part-timers. So we're what is this now? 70% of the way through the season.
Yeah, your full-timers are starving.
Yeah.
And you're not leading them to water.
I don't.
They can't get to the water.
Yeah. And again, I don't know that you can step in as a series and, automatically fix the solution. But what does it say when, I mean, and how good is it for your drivers who are trying to work their way up? Like, is this the best place for Andres Perez and LeVar Scott, who are 1-2 in the championship right now? And Perez, unfortunately, had a mechanical issue, had to settle for a 15th place run here. LeVar Scott gaining back a lot of what he lost at Michigan on the points battle, but I think Perez still holding a pretty healthy lead in the series right now. But I don't know. I mean, it honestly, it makes me wonder now that the series is under NASCAR sanctioning. The last time a guy almost won a championship without winning a race, we completely revamped how we crown our champion the very next year in the Cup Series. I don't know what's going to happen, but it feels like what is happening this year in this series. And I'm not putting a win past. I mean, LeVar Scott was this close at Elko. Andres Perez has, 3 second place finishes in the last 4 races coming into Springfield. You know, they come close, and it's certainly not past their capabilities. But I don't know. I don't think it's a great look for the series if your full timers can't be taking those celebratory photos in victory lane, because you know it's really just 2 cars have a monopoly on this series, no matter who's driving them.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, let's answer a day in the life's question here. Should ARCA be a spec series? I would be cautious about that. I think that's probably going a little bit further in the opposite problem sort of direction here. And I also I don't know what that would look like, but you know, it's just again, it's hard for me to envision going to a spec series from a series where you have everybody from Joe Gibbs Racing to, you know, Andy Hillenberg and Brad Smith are out there. Like if they all had equal equipment, I mean, it would certainly, I'd love to see what that would look like in execution. You know, Brad Smith in the exact same car as William Sawalich. I think that'd be sort of interesting to get an answer on. But I don't know if you want to run a full season or a full series like that. I think that's, you know, always been part of the appeal of ARCA, you know, is that it's been, you know, it's never been like this. I don't think, at least not that I can recall. But, you know, I think that's, you know, you hear these stories about teams coming in with their car in an open trailer and sometimes taking the fight to, you know, some of maybe not the Venturinis of the world, but, you know, having strong runs as underdogs. I think that's part of what ARCA is all about. And I think if you make it a spec series, you know, you certainly are going to lose that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's a big pitfall there. If you did do that, we you know, if we can ever get back to that where an underdog does have the chance to win, we want to make sure there still are underdogs that can fulfill that story.
Yeah, and well, an interesting scenario here. I don't know, maybe Joe, you can talk about this the next time we have a weekend show with WRC, because that's admittedly of the series in the grid ranking. I will fully admit that is a series that I'm least familiar with, but I have been watching your coverage of that this year, Joe, and I know that it's a similar situation there with some of your former champions like your Sebastian Ogier's or your Kelly Rovan Perez coming in as part-timers and still winning the races that they enter, even though they're not competing full-time for a championship. And where does that leave the full-timers? It's an interesting question that I think they have to answer as well. All right, we'll leave it there, and we'll recap Indy next year real quick. They were also in action this weekend, returning from the break at Gateway, and Louis Foster took yet another win. I think this all but solidifies his championship here with just a few races to go. A little bit of an interesting situation, kind of a controversial moment early in the race. Certainly chaotic start to the race with Miles Rowe spinning out early as well. You see him down there in 17th. Jamie Chadwick and Kyle Collette were involved in an interesting situation early on in the race. It seemed to me like Collette was continuing to just move down the track and forcing Chadwick further down the straightaway, and eventually the two made contact that put them out of the race. So it's unfortunate for Jamie in particular, who qualified on the front row for this race. I know she really struggled at Gateway last year. She was learning and adapting to the ovals, so she was hoping for a much better run, and she showed much better speed this year. Unfortunately, just didn't get the finish to show for it. But as for her teammate Louis Foster, you have to think that he's all but locked up the championship at this point. So we'll continue to keep our eye on Indy next year as the season wraps up. Again, reminder, Joe Samniego, who you've seen him in chat tonight, he will be covering the Portland Grand Prix race weekend along with our own Jackson Lambros. So we are certainly looking forward to that. In the meantime, Brandon, let's wrap up our show here tonight. What's your one shining moment from the past weekend here in motorsports?
Not sure why I put this one. It's more of a throwaway, but McDonald's did have a long streak of not finding victory lane, and of course they broke it a while ago, and now it's neat to see that streak kind of become a thing of the past, where they can double down and think of like a cheeseburger or something. They double down and able to win with Tyler Reddick here in Michigan today. So I know they're a multi-billion-dollar company, so who cares? But I don't know. It's just streaks like that pique my interest, and it's neat to see that kind of legend of McDonald's never able to win in NASCAR kind of become a thing in the past, and they're able to double down on it too. And then also, I guess I'll add to it, Justin Allgaier, getting his first win at Michigan, and also just surpassing Dale Earnhardt Jr. Man, he's going to remember that for a long time, even if Dale does somehow come back and tie it up again.
Well, he mentioned that in his interview. Dale was very close to winning Bristol last year. Looked like he at least had a shot at it. I don't know if you could say he had it in the bag, but he was certainly going to be in contention before he had the fire force him out of the race. So we'll see here. And I know Dale's kind of teased that this might be the last Xfinity race. I feel like he said that in past years as well. It's really a year-to-year sort of deal for him, but I think he's enjoying the late model stuff that he's doing. And, I think people sometimes underestimate how much it takes to put these one race a year programs together for him, but we'll see. I certainly hope it's not his last. I hope he continues doing them as many years as is possible for him. But special moment for Allgaier nonetheless. And McDonald's as well, Brandon. I think you weren't the only one that kind of brought the McDouble theme on the social media this week, because I think there was a shot of Reddick passing Bubba Wallace. There were two of them running side by side at one point on Sunday, and everybody bringing the McDouble memes up because he had McDonald's on both the cars this weekend. And of course, Bubba being the one that broke the streak at Talladega a few years ago, and now Tyler Reddick getting a win of his own for McDonald's. Great to see them back in victory lane with how long they've been involved in the sport here as well.
Yeah, I'm all for teammates having the same or similar schemes, because it just feels like Evernham to me. So I'm all for that.
Well, I want to give a shout out again. I know I mentioned it a little bit during our ARCA segment here, but even though William Sawalich and Joe Gibbs Racing spoiled the party and parked it in victory lane, once again, still nonetheless a great day for Venturini Motorsports. They had 4 female drivers in this race, and we'll talk about this a lot more on Women in Motorsport later this week. But Isabella Robusto 2nd, Taylor Reimer 3rd, Tony Breininger 6th, Amber Balkin 8th, even Chris Wright, let's not forget him, in that 5th Venturini car, despite stalling out and having an issue midway through the race. He came back for a 7th place finish. So 5 Venturini cars in the top 8, all 4 female drivers in the top 8. And Amber Balkin, to her credit, kept the receipts on X/Twitter this week. Somebody responded to ARCA's tweet teasing that this historic moment was going to happen. At Steve Ha, bunch of numbers, first name, bunch of numbers. We always love hearing their insights on social media, predicting very confidently none of them will finish in the top 10. Amber quoting yesterday, we all finished in the top 10.
Well done.
And they all even finished in the top 8, as you can see right here. So how about that for Venturini's lineup of female drivers here? And again, you want to talk about strong performances. I think Isabella Robusto, you have to say, talking about drivers that are knocking on the door of their first win, I have to think that win's coming at some point. Hopefully she'll get a few more opportunities in that ARCA car later this year. And we'll see if she can put a full-time deal together for next season. But nonetheless, great day with everything that went into putting these deals together, not just for Isabella, but for Taylor Reimer as well, getting another opportunity in this car and in this series here on the dirt. And then solid runs from their full-timers as well. Tony Breininger and Amber Balkin, 6th and 8th, runs that they needed, I think, after a couple of tough weekends here in this series. So well done to all of them. That's my one shining moment for this evening's show. All right, Brandon, I don't know. Sorry, I feel like maybe I interrupted you. I don't know if you wanted to follow up on that here. Otherwise, I'll go into the closing.
Oh, no, not really. I mean, I believe all the hype with Isabella Robusto. I definitely believe your sentiment with the next thing since Shauna Robinson and then some. The win's coming, and it certainly could have been this past weekend, and knocking on the door. Got a lot of potential.
Yeah, and I should mention as well, I almost forgot, Robusto and Breininger both had mechanical issues, prevented them from setting a qualifying time. So they had to start in the back row of the grid, 19th and 20th, and they still were able to drive up through the field. I think Breininger was running as high as 4th at one point in the race, so very strong runs for them, especially when you consider how they had to start the race. So well done to that entire team, and great moment from this weekend, even if it was the Gibbs 18 parking in victory lane once again. But shouldn't let that take away from the strong performances that they all put in. So
yeah, as ARCA usually goes, the story is always behind the podium. It's well behind the podium.
Yeah, but again, I mean, just within the podium there, 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah,
2 female drivers from the same team there. Great story still, nonetheless. So well done, Venturini. That's my one shining moment, and that's our show for tonight. So thank you all so much for sticking with us here. And make sure you follow us on all our social media platforms, X/Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Threads. Most importantly, right here on YouTube. Thank you for 1,000 subscribers earlier this year. Once again, now join us on the road to 2,000 and beyond. And like I mentioned at the start of the show, if you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take a few minutes and consider joining our Patreon. Join Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in Grid Network to help keep us on the air throughout 2024 and beyond. And it's more important on these weekends more than ever because, as you can see here, we have an exciting weekend coming up at the Grid Network with Joe Samniego and Jackson Lambros on site at Portland once again. So if you want to see that more often going forward, you can consider joining these folks in the Patreon, and that will become a reality here for us at Grid Network. So that'll only continue to expand our coverage for you, the viewers. So thank you all so much for your continued support. You can also become a member of the Grid Network YouTube channel, or if you're watching us on YouTube, we have super chats enabled as well if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, or you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below as well. Now, looking ahead at our upcoming schedule, don't miss Grid Tonight later this week with Kobe Lambeth and Joshua Birch. Matt White is off this weekend, so we're still trying to figure out who's going to fill in for him. Maybe you'll see me, maybe it'll be somebody else, so stay tuned for that. And then Women in Motorsports back this weekend as well. Obviously, a lot to recap in the ARCA series with Venturini, so more on that later this week. And then, like I said, big weekend for the Grid Network coming up here at Portland. Brandon, any other final thoughts before we sign off for the evening?
Yeah, a couple of things on personal notes. High school football starts back this Friday, so getting back into the booth for that. It's always unnerving to get that first game out of the way, but looking forward to that again. And also have some other personal news. I've accepted this year. I was asked to be the voice of the Governor's Own marching band at Austin Peay State University. That's my alma mater, and so going to be taking on that venture this year. Very excited about that, and I thought if I don't take that chance, I may not see that chance again. So I'm gonna take that and be a part of the college football landscape this year as well, from the booth for the marching band there at Austin Peay.
Well, congratulations. Sounds like a great opportunity for you. And yeah, I guess it's that time of year. School's going to be starting back up, colleges and universities. I'm going to be helping out with my alma mater, the Fighting Scots at Gordon College, cross-country season starting up, and then we'll roll right into indoor track in the winter and outdoor track in the spring. So that'll take up a lot of my Saturdays here coming up with meets, but great to continue to volunteer and give back to that program a little bit. That means so much to me. So hopefully we'll be doing that podcast again this year if that's your thing. If you want to learn more about a D3 cross-country and track program, you can tune into that as well. Shameless plug. But yeah, looking forward to the weekend, obviously. Big weekend for us here at Grid. And sounds like you've got a lot of good things going on as well, Brandon. So wish you the best with that. On a racing-related note, I saw the entry list come out for Xfinity at Daytona this week. Of course, obviously, Haley Deacon was full-time in the 15 for AM Racing this year. That deal didn't work out, so we've seen kind of a rotation of drivers in and out of that car in the recent weeks. Lawless Allen was in the car this weekend. Unfortunately, had an accident, didn't have the result that he was hoping for. But I mentioned Gus Dean as one of the ARCA winners this year. He's going to be in the 15 this weekend at Daytona, and of course, he won that ARCA race earlier this year. So we'll see. Maybe he can turn that program around a little bit with this opportunity that he's got coming up here on Friday night. Again, weather permitting, we'll see. This time of year, you never know, down at Daytona. Yeah,
always get the different exciting driver lineups for anytime we set foot at Daytona or Talladega. So thank you for that.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that this weekend. And like I said, lots of motorsports coming up here for us here at Grid, and a big weekend for us. So make sure you stay tuned for all our coverage. For Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time right here on the Grid Network.